Morning everyone, and welcome to the Electricmotorgp show. My name is Nee and I'm your usual host, and today I'm going to be taking you through the Model Y Juniper refresh. I've not jumped to release a video when the refresh was launched on Thursday or Friday. Why? I wanted to figure out a way to do it, and I wanted to do it in such a way that if anyone was able to pick up a video and listen to it and watch it and understand it, they'd get some specific information from it. So I wanted context. And information without context is really difficult, because without context, you don't understand the importance of a specific thing and why that thing can have a significant impact on the future of an organization. And in this particular instance, you're talking about the Model Y. The Model Y is Tesla's most successful car. It is also the most successful EV in the world. It's been copycatted by dozens and dozens of car makers. It's been benchmarked by even more car makers. You don't talk about EVs and trying to make a car in the EV space without considering or talking about the Model Y. The Model Y was first discussed in 2019 and launched in 2020. And when it was launched, it was very, very successful, becoming the fastest and most successful car that Tesla's ever made. The Model Y was responsible for Tesla expanding capacity, the expansion into China, the expansion into Germany, the expansion into Texas. All of this was predominantly as a consequence of the Model Y. It grew Tesla from being a 300 to 400,000 unit car company to a 1.8 million car company. It wasn't the only one responsible for that, but the sales figures for the Tesla Model Y is remarkable. Even within the Chinese market alone, there are at least 6 different cars that are benchmarking or copying this car outright. So that tells you how important the Tesla Model Y is. Why have I taken the time to give you the context of the car? I wanted you to understand the impact of not being at the forefront of redesign on Tesla. So Tesla in 2023 sold 1.8 million cars. Everyone was very, very interested. Everyone wanted to have a piece of it. In fact, they still wanted a piece of it in 2024, but Tesla did something that it probably shouldn't have, which is to announce that in 12 months' time, we would be giving you a refresh. The consequence of doing that is that all the people who really wanted the Tesla Model Y for 2024 had to think whether or not they were happy to have what would become a slightly obsolete version of the car in a few months, or if they needed to wait. That's the first bit. The second bit is, because they've waited 4 years to do a refresh, they've allowed other pretenders, usurpers, competitors in this space to come up with models that are relevant, close to, or almost at the same equivalent of the Tesla Model Y. Off the top of my head, I could give you 3 cars that benchmark this and are very, very close. You've got the Envoy L60, which is completely benchmarked by the Tesla Model Y. Almost every single thing about the car is benchmarked to it. The X-Men G6 has benchmarked the Tesla Model Y as well. And the Geely EX5 that's coming through has also benchmarked the Tesla Model Y. The fourth car that I could tell you is the EV5. The EV5 clearly benchmarked in terms of price in almost every country where it's being sold, so that when people want to buy the EV5, they will look at the pricing of the EV5 with the pricing of the Tesla Model Y and make a choice if they want one or the other. Context. The next thing in there was the design. What did Tesla want to do? Tesla realized that, look, there's a lot of competition coming in. There's a lot of things that people are doing. How do we make this better? First of all, they tried it with the Model 3. By doing the Model 3 first, they were able to take more risk with the Model 3, find out what worked and what didn't work, and at the same time make sure that the car stayed relevant and it didn't piss off too many people and lose a significant market share. So the things that they took a risk with on the Model 3, they could not afford to take a risk with the Model Y. So that takes us to the gear stalks, okay? The gear stalks and the indicator stalks were taken off the Model 3. The blowback on both of them were significant. Tesla tries to tell you they're minimalistic, but what Tesla is doing is efficiency and cost cutting to what is acceptable and what is not. But you've got to stay relevant because the Chinese automakers are also putting a lot of pressure by putting a lot of things into their cars at an affordable price that undercuts Tesla. So the gear stalk was taken off. And for most of us, which includes me, in my previous videos, you've heard me say I don't like the customer service of Tesla in WA. And that has put me off and probably will still put me off buying Juniper. But it's important that when you're doing something, customer service is not the only thing that puts people off, that the actual car itself is still a pull factor for people to decide, well, I'll cope with the customer service simply because I like the car. And the indicator stalk was one of those ones that was going to put a lot of people off. The other bit that I didn't like about the indicator stalk is, yes, if you live in China where you've got a lot of straight roads, you're fine with the indicator stalk not being on it because you can get away with it. In places like Europe and some parts of Africa and some parts of Australia where you've got a lot of windy roads, if you don't have the gear stalk and the steering's upside down, you don't know where to indicate, and that puts you at risk of having accidents. And a lot of people have said, and I was one of the first people to say this as well, it put me off. But what you can say that Tesla has done is they've listened and they've taken that information and they've done a trade-off. The trade-off is, right, we'll give you back the indicator stalk and we'll keep the gear stalk. Because you guys didn't complain a lot about the gear stalks, you complained a lot about the indicator stalk. So they put it back. However, from the information that's reaching me, I cannot verify this because I haven't had the car, is that the indicator stalk is now a smart indicator stalk. Now, I'm not sure if they've borrowed this idea of the manufacturer says sexies will make the sexy gear stalk, an indicator stalk which they made for the Model Y refresh. But now it means that the Tesla is going to be a smart indicator stalk adapter type thing, so which is good. Tesla, thank you for listening. I think it's important for you to listen to your consumers. I think it's a very important thing for manufacturers to understand that customer service and consumer feedback is pretty important. Now, moving on to the next bit, which is efficiency. What has Tesla done? Tesla's figured out that they needed to achieve two things similar to what they did in the Model 3 refresh in this particular car as well. They needed to find a different way of building the car to make it more efficient, A. B, improve the aerodynamics. C, figure out a way to make it also more aesthetically pleasing. And they've managed to do that with three things. The first thing they did was to come up with the new giga-casting method, which puts 70 different moving parts into one unique part that can be casted in one go, which means you've got less likelihood of things breaking down, you've got less likelihood of wear and tear in those 70 moving parts, and you've got less need to go into the shops to get your car fixed because one part out of 70 is not working and it's impacted on everything else. The consequence of this, though, is that your repair bills might be a bit more. However, it also means that the chances of you needing a repair is also lower. So it's a trade-off, efficiency. Let's talk about the light bars. The light bars on the front, similar to what was on the Cybertruck, you've done the same thing here. So you've got a thin light bar that comes across and a little bit in the middle. None of it's joined together, which also means that the car is more aerodynamic as well. So the changes in the aerodynamics of the car also means that the car is more efficient and gets a better range even with the same battery. Now, the light bar on the back also looks futuristic. It's the whole red thing with Tesla written on it, joined to the two things at the side. It's a thing of beauty. And I really like it, and I think most people will like it too. The chassis, so drive and handling. I drove a Tesla Model Y for a short period of time last year, and I didn't like it because the chassis was very stiff, and every single time you went over a bump, you felt it in the interior. It didn't cushion out most of the bumps, and it did give me a lot of aches when I got out of the car. Tesla's taking this feedback on board, especially with the Chinese market, where comfort is the number one priority for the Chinese consumer ahead of ride handling. So if you notice, almost everyone on the western side of the world and in Africa and every place, whenever they talk about the Chinese cars, the first thing they talk about them is that it's too soft. Because the priority for the Chinese is comfort, which also is explained why their cabin space is almost always bigger than every other car from everywhere else. So if you take this on board and you understand that this is important, Tesla's had to make a compromise. They've had to figure out how to put a car on the market that is going to be comfortable, but also has a good handling. Because if you look at it, 1 in every 3 Teslas sold on the planet is sold in China. They sell 660,000 units a year in China. That's a combination of both of all the models that Tesla makes. So if 1 in 3 is sold in China, you definitely don't want to lose or piss off that market. And I think they found the right compromise. They've improved the ride handling of the car, they've improved the suspension, they've fixed the chassis, and they've also increased the responsiveness of the steering, which means you get a sporty steering with a more comfortable ride, and it's now steer-by-wire, which means that you get a more responsiveness from the tires and in the car when you move the car around, which is a pretty good thing. I haven't tested it, and I'm not sure anyone has, but based on the feedback and based on the information that's been provided, this is something that people have been looking at. So let's go to the interior. The interior of the car is also being updated to be more in tune with what's going on with the rest of the competitors for Tesla. I'll start from the front and I'll walk my way back. So we've already talked about the indicator stalk. The infotainment system is also being addressed. So the infotainment system is slightly bigger now, from 15 inches to 15.4 inches, which means there's slightly more surface area for you to be able to mess about with things and get things done in the car, which is a very good thing. Now, when you're also talking about what has been done in the car, the seats have been changed. You've now got cooled seats, and this helps countries where the weather is really hot. So places like the Middle East, places like Australia, places like parts of Africa, where when the car is very, very hot, being the fact that it's faux leather, it means that you get stuck in the seats and it's very uncomfortable. That's been fixed by making the seats cooled. The back of the car also now has an 8-inch infotainment system at the back, which means if kids are in the back, they've got access to games, they've got access to watching programs in there without having to interfere with the front screen and interfere with their parents up front, which is a good thing. The seats are also more comfortable, plusher, and generally feels better. And more importantly, the seats are now electronic, which means you can fold them, you can adjust them, you can make adjustments with the seats from the push of a button, which is a lot better than what was there before. On the exterior, the black colors are gone. So I don't know why, it might come back, but based on the launch series, there's no color, there's no black, and the default color for Tesla's gone from white to being gray, which for me is okay. Now, if you do decide to get the launch model, you get a lot of things coming as standard. You got the performance boost coming as standard, which means that unlike in the previous iterations of the car where the standard range was doing 0 to 106.8 seconds, the standard range now does 0 to 100 in 5.9, which is a whole second faster. The all-wheel drive non-performance model now does 0 to 100 in 4.6 seconds, which is significantly faster than the previous iteration of the car. The performance model has not been launched. We have no idea what that is going to look like, but I can assume that it's safe to say that that car is also going to drop from 3.6 seconds to about 3.2 seconds. But how did they achieve this? A was aerodynamics, which I mentioned to you earlier on. The car is lighter, it's more streamlined, and it's more efficient in the way it's been designed. So those 3 things. The motors is the same, it hasn't changed. You got a 220 kilowatt rear wheel motor on the rear wheel drive standard ranged version, And on the all-wheel drive, you've got 220 at the back and you've got 145 or 150 up front, which gives you about 360, 370 kilowatts of power on the electric motors, which is also pretty good. The battery hasn't changed. So the base model gets the 67 kilowatt hour battery, which is the LFP, and the all-wheel drive long range has the 79.7 kilowatt hour NMC battery. So the battery hasn't changed. The specs and things in the car hasn't really changed. What has changed is the efficiency of the design. So based on this, you now get 466 kilometers on the base model, which is the standard rear wheel drive, and you get 551 on the all-wheel drive long-range model. This is slight improvements from what was there before. The only thing that a few people might find upsetting, but I'm not one of them because I don't speed that much. I like the acceleration, but I don't speed, is the fact that you will find the maximum speed on the Tesla Model Y Juniper has dropped. So on the previous model, the maximum speed was 217 kilometers, which is about 145 miles per hour. And it's dropped now to 201 kilometers, which is about 137, 140 miles per hour. So that gives you a slight change in the speed of the car, but not significantly more. The car on the interior is also quieter. The acoustic glass have been put in. They've done a lot of efforts to try and reduce the sound intrusion into the cabin space, which means that the car is more comfortable, more quiet, and it's better in that context. So all in all, Tesla's gone out of his way to try and make this car much better. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think they might have succeeded. I'm still not a fan of the fact that the gear selector is on the screen, and I don't think you're going to get me to change and like that, no. But they might have succeeded. They've taken into account almost everything that's important to everyone, and they've tried their best to accommodate and fix that. And if you remember at the beginning of the video, I said you could take risks with the Model 3. You couldn't take risks with the Model Y. The Model Y for 2023, 2024, best SUV on the planet, best EV on the planet. Fact. So how do you take a risk on that and risk alienating your consumer base so much that the amount of time that it's going to take you to repair that relationship will be significant? You can't. You can take a risk with the Model 3 and you can fix that problem at a later date, but you can't take the risk with the Model Y. And I respect that. And that's the genius of Elon, of knowing where to take the risks and when not to take the risks. It's as smart as you could hope for. So all in all, this car is fantastic. I think this refresh has worked. It's managed to get the requirements of the general public right. It's managed to do so in a manner that it can cover more people and satisfy more people, while at the same time making sure that it doesn't lose its market share. Because I forgot to mention earlier on, Tesla has got 6% of the market share in China. That's significant. And even last year, irrespective of what we were talking about, that they were struggling, they still had an 8.85% year-on-year increase in sales. Globally, it fell by 1%. So instead of getting to the 1.8 million is 1.76 or 1.77 million thereabouts units of cars that were sold. So it was still successful, but they had to sacrifice a lot to achieve that. They had to drop the prices to stay relevant in the Chinese market. And while the rest of the world is thinking, oh, Tesla's dropping his price because he's trying, no, Tesla realized that he was facing stiff competition in China and he needed to maintain market share, because it's more difficult to get market share than it is to maintain it. So all in all, they've done a very good job. They've done what they were supposed to do to stay relevant, and they've done it correctly, in my opinion. If you disagree with me, please let me know. If there are things that you think Tesla should have done in this car and you would prefer for us to have a conversation about, definitely put it in the comment section. Let's have a chat about it and let's see what we can do about it. Thank you everyone who's stayed to the end. I've put timestamps at the end of this video so that you can know when to jump in at different points in time. And you can also know exactly where it is, which parts of it are very important to you that you want to listen to. But I will encourage you to listen to the whole thing because it gives you context and it gives you a good idea of what's going on with the cars and everything else that you need to know about the Model Y. Finally, for those of you in China, you're already aware that if you can make your orders now and the cars will start being delivered from March. For Australia, the delivery is going to be from May. We're one of the luckiest people because we get our versions of cars from China, which means we'll get our deliveries about May, 2 months after the deliveries in China start. Again, as I mentioned earlier on, the Chinese market's about 650,000 units for Tesla as a whole, which means they've got to try and keep them happy while trying to keep up with the rest of the world as well. The US, we don't know when you're going to get your versions come through. I anticipate that it's going to be about June, July for you guys as well. But if you're very lucky, you might be able to start getting some through about April, May too. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, if you've enjoyed what I've said, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that if there's any new videos that you get notifications that the videos are there and you can get to watch them and keep through. Please share with your friends and so that we can grow the numbers and make sure that we continue to stay relevant. The aim is still to continue to provide you with good information and good reviews as we get them. And as usual, I try not to just jump in and provide you with just facts and figures. I think it's always important to put it into context, and context is key in understanding information. So thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.